It's Mr. Daniel Frakes, who's the Director of Global Regulatory Development for GM Public Policy in the USA. He's here to talk to us about a country case this time for the US experience in the usage of plug-in vehicles. And Mr. Frakes, I think, epitomises the multidisciplinary approach that's required by electrical vehicles, covering not just electrification, but also the environment, energy emissions, fuel economy, etc.
Salam alaikum. Thank you for that kind introduction, and I'm very privileged and honored to be part of this inaugural event. Thank you for the invitation to General Motors for this event. So what I'm going to talk about today is the U.S. plug-in vehicle market, and it started almost 5 years ago to the month of this conference when the major manufacturers started bringing out plug-in vehicles in volume. So I'll talk about that and what's been going on over the past 5 years. And this industry is changing very rapidly. Our CEO, Mary Barra, has stated that the automotive industry is going to change more in the next 10 years than it has in the past 50. So if you think of that, the types of vehicles that are out there now, talking about the future of self-driving cars, about cars that can communicate to each other wirelessly, there's lots of changes coming. So I bring this up. What do you think this is? I'd like to think it might be our investment portfolios and how we'd like to see our future growth. But to be honest, what it is plug-in vehicles cumulative sales in the U.S. for the first 2 years of launch. So this is 2011 and 2012. Auto manufacturers had some very high aspirational goals. Our U.S. government also stated publicly some very high goals for plug-in vehicle sales, and this trajectory was on a very nice glide path. If you look over the past 5 years, you see the continued growth of plug-in vehicles in the U.S. market. Towards the end, you're seeing a little bit of a decline. I think what that is really attributed to is you've got that early adopters have already purchased these vehicles. So now you're trying to get to that traditional car buyer that is not really comfortable with a plug-in vehicle yet. And it's our job to try to educate them and get them comfortable. But one key point here is 4 models make up 75% of the vehicles sold, plug-in vehicles sold in the U.S. So you've got Toyota, General Motors, Tesla, and the Nissan Leaf. So since the launch in end of 2010, early 2011, we have over 350,000 plug-in vehicles in the U.S. market. If you look at the types of vehicles that make up these plug-in vehicles, you have two kind of complete ends of the spectrum. You've got a pure battery electric vehicle that just has the battery and electric motor to propel it. On the other end, you have a plug-in hybrid that has a smaller electric range that's speed and power dependent. And then you have what General Motors came out with, which was called an extended range electric vehicle. So this has about a 45-mile range, and that's from electricity being brought onto the vehicle from off, like the electrical grid. And then the vehicle has a gas motor that acts as a generator to create more electricity on the vehicle so you can get to your destination and have a very long driving range, north of 300 miles. So when we talk about partners and getting customers to consider a new vehicle and making a shift of things that they're normally trying to try something new to be, for example, who should be involved? We have lots of players. We have governments, we can have cities involved, we have utilities that are creating the electricity, the regulators, of course, permitting officials that give the permits for installing charging stations should be part of the discussions, employers, universities, OEMs, and dealers. So when you look at creating desired enablers or making a game-changing plan, you have to talk about the infrastructure, what incentives are needed to entice these customers to make this change, and then what sort of educational outreach do we need for these consumers. If you look at what people typically get enticed by, it's by their wallets. So incentives to get people to consider this technology, like vehicle purchase incentives, or even incentives to install and get free charging stations in their homes might be considered. In terms of the utilities, you'll look at offering lower utility costs maybe in the evenings when the cars are at home so they can charge at a lower rate or lower cost. Again, government fleets, we could lead by example by taking the fleet of vehicles that are currently in governments and rolling in these new clean technologies. This bottom row talks about kind of non-monetary incentives. The HOV lane access, this is high occupancy vehicle lane. In the state of California, traffic is very, very dense, and time is very valuable to the customers there. So if you can allow this advanced technology vehicles to have kind of this express lane access, it's a motivator for people to consider that. Also, many cities charge pretty high fees to park vehicles in the city. So if you give a preference to plug-in vehicles to allow those to be parking for free, that's an enticer, and again, something else to keep allowing customers to consider these sorts of vehicles. When we launched the first generation Volt, we did this very strategically. We didn't have it all across the country at once because we didn't want to frustrate customers by, as we're ramping up volume, having only a few vehicles available in the showroom and nothing to show if it just got sold. So we targeted markets that hybrid sales were very successful. We launched there and then continually, gradually rolled out across the country, and we did this in less than a year. So it was nationwide in less than a year. When you look at outreach programs, what we did is we targeted some very key organizations. For example, we talked to electricians in their organizations to educate them on charging infrastructure and how to install it. Also, we were part of an industry-led coalition called the Electric Drive Transportation Association, and this was a non-biased organization that was made up of auto manufacturers, charging infrastructure organizations, and it was a site that was developed for customers to go to learn about what is a plug-in vehicle, how many kinds are out there, are there incentives in my area, how do I charge these things? It's just a really nice educational piece. For our dealers, we trained both our sales and our service associates very specifically for these customers. What we found is the customers that are looking at plug-in vehicles are very highly educated. They're very well paid in terms of their net wealth, and they research endlessly before they even go to a dealership. So likely the customers were coming in and would know more about the technology than our salespeople. So we focused very hard on that. And then also with the service technicians, obviously these vehicles are high voltage systems, so we made sure that they knew how to operate these vehicles and work on them extremely safely. The last piece here that we are very proud of, before the first Chevrolet Volt left the showroom, or left the manufacturing facility to the showrooms, we educated the first responders. So these are the folks that would be first on the scene after a vehicle had been in a crash. So we would educate them on how to interact with this new technology so they could get people out of vehicles very safely. This was our mantra when we launched the first vehicle. So bottom line, what can we do to accelerate the plug-in vehicle market? Do everything possible. And then I'll add a piece here, include all the partners that you need to make it possible. Now Francois talked about standards. I'll touch just a little bit about that, but I will talk about infrastructure. And this is something we learned about very well in the 5 years in the U.S. because everybody had a different opinion on what should be the possible infrastructure solution. You had people that say, only have charging at your home. Some people said you need charging stations on every corner. And so there was lots of discussions about this topic. And when you think of a battery electric vehicle compared to your traditional gasoline vehicle, when you fuel a car, you drive it for maybe a week and then fuel again maybe twice in a week. With a battery electric, you have the opportunity to have that fueling station in your home. So you could charge at your home. And you can charge daily, incrementally, and use it more efficiently that way. So it's a different model and a different mindset. What we're finding is about 70% of all charging is being done at home. Not too surprising because that's where the vehicle is going to be sitting the longest. The next opportunity that we see and recommend is charging at the workplace. And we recommend employers consider allowing their employees to have access to charge vehicles at work because, again, this is another great opportunity where these vehicles are sitting for quite some time. And then for public charging, what we're recommending and seeing as probably a good solution for this is DC fast charging because vehicles are not going to be sitting for long periods of time where people are not going to want to sit for long periods of time during just short public charging stations. Just an example here of leading by example. General Motors offers charging to their employees. Typically, the charging stations are in prominent locations, so you get a lot of people seeing that GM is offering this, and it gets more people interested in it. On the last slide, we did note that the Department of Energy did a study that said that if employers offer workplace charging, employees are 20 times more likely to consider an electric vehicle. So that's a pretty staggering number, to be honest. Again, if you're going to offer something free to employees, we decided to put out some etiquette on how to take advantage and use this nice perk in terms of letting people know how to use free charging stations. First off, we talked about safety, making sure that the cords aren't a trip hazard, that the charging head isn't laying on the ground, put everything away, that EV spots are designed for EVs. So if there's a gasoline vehicle that's parking there, we have to intervene and educate people that these spots are strictly for EVs and there's a reason for that. They're on a first come, first served basis. So if you get to work really early, you're probably going to get a charging spot. If not, you may have to wait. But what we're also finding is that the EV community within General Motors is becoming very close-knit. So they're talking to each other, they're working with each other on swapping vehicles out throughout the day so people can charge their vehicles and everybody can try to leverage this resource that we're providing our employees. When we talk about charging infrastructure standards, the Society of Automotive Engineers developed J1772, which is made up of the bulk of the industry here, and you have either the AC charging or the DC fast charging. The bulk of the industry, with the exception of Tesla, followed this J1772 for AC charging. DC charging, there's 3 at the moment. So there's 1772, Nissan and Mitsubishi had their own unique standard, and then Tesla again had their unique standard. It would have been a complete success if that entire box was blue, but it is much better than, for example, the cell phone industry or the computer industry. This was the bulk of what Francois talked about in terms of regulations that were specifically designed for electric vehicles. We have the UNECE regulations here, the U.S. equivalent, and what General Motors is recommending for countries that are considering regulating electric vehicles. is to follow this GTR program that's being developed right now. It's targeted to be done by the end of 2016, but it's going to be the most complete, most up-to-date of essentially the globe's learnings of electric vehicles and what we should do to regulate them safely. So where did this all start for General Motors with plug-in electric vehicles? This was the first generation Chevrolet Volt. When you charge the vehicle up, it'll go approximately 40 miles on a charge. And then when you deplete that charge, it has that gasoline generator that activates automatically and provides the battery more electricity to allow you to get to your destination. So it's about 300 plus range total for the vehicle. Just to give you a look underneath what the car looks like, the lithium-ion battery right here, it's called the TPAC. This is the power unit, the gas generator, and of course the charge port. You can see the battery is buried well in the center of the vehicle to keep it extremely safe. What we've learned in things that we are very proud of with the battery technology here, we found that batteries are kind of like us. We don't like to be too hot, we don't like to be too cold. And this battery is climate controlled. It has a system that keeps it at an optimal temperature. But of the volts that are out there, we've had over 1 billion miles driven, 700 million just on pure battery electric grid electricity, over 22 million battery cells produced, and fewer than 2 problems per million cells. We're calling that pharmaceutical level quality. We're very, very pleased with this battery chemistry. A lot of people ask, why did Chevrolet consider 40 miles as the range for your battery electric vehicle? The Department of Energy did a study for commuters in the U.S. Just under 80% travel to and from work 40 miles or less. So that would give them the opportunity to plug their vehicle in at home, drive it to work, drive it back home, and then plug it in, just on pure grid electricity. But because it has that extended range, they don't need another vehicle. They can still do all the goodness of driving on grid electricity and then have the extended range if they need to drive to Abu Dhabi and back. I'm going to skip that particular slide, just in the interest of time. When you talk about surveying our Volt customers and what they really like about driving with electric vehicles, you see things like fun to drive, comfortable, quiet, technology. You see fuel efficiency and environmentally friendly. That was mentioned a little bit less, which surprised us. But the fun to drive and quiet aspects is very unique with battery-powered vehicles. When the Volt came out, it won just about every award possible. And I'm not putting this up to brag, maybe just a little bit. But the key things here that I wanted to point out is the recognition from NHTSA for its crash performance, the top safety pick from the National Highway Institute of Public Safety, and Consumer Reports recommended Best Buy. All things that we're extremely proud of for this brand new technology. So what's next? We just announced the next generation Chevrolet Volt. We're the first manufacturer to be launching the next generation of their plug-in vehicle. Very much different, all completely brand new. The design you can see is much more aggressive, a little more sporty. Things that we were hearing from our customers, they said, why does my fuel-efficient, environmentally friendly car need to look so strange? So we took that into account with the development of the Chevrolet Volt. Everything's better. The range is increased about 40%. The fuel efficiency, both from the battery perspective as well as the gas generator, is increased. The performance of the vehicle is increased. The price is decreased. And all in all, a phenomenal car. The first vehicle, the first gen vehicle, we're saying customers would drive on grid electricity about 70 to 80% of the time with that 40-mile range. On this vehicle, we're saying it's going to be nearly 90% of all trips are going to be driven on grid electricity. The key point on this slide that I want to show is the advancements in battery technology. The first-gen battery was about 425 pounds with 17.1 kilowatt hours of energy with 288 cells. The next-gen battery has higher energy density with nearly 100 less cells. So the battery chemistry is coming a long way to make these efficiencies with the next-gen battery. When you look at another announcement that we made, we're going to have a pure battery electric vehicle called the Bolt. This is going to have approximately a 200-mile range, approximately $30,000 after the federal tax credit in the U.S., and it's going to be available nationwide. So the last slide I'll touch on here is, how do we, as a collective group, get people interested in these vehicles? And we really need to focus on customer demand and getting customers to really know these vehicles are out there, but more importantly, experience these vehicles, because once you get someone in the vehicle, they realize how fantastic they are and how much of a different driving experience it is. There's some room to be done on charging infrastructure. As I mentioned, the workplace has a lot of opportunities for us in the U.S., also with public DC fast charging for growth there. And then the role of governments is to continue, in our mind, to offer incentives to these customers until we get to a point where they're going to consider this vehicle no matter if there's an incentive or not, because they want these vehicles. So with that, I appreciate your time, and thank you for inviting me to the conference, and I look forward to any questions if there may be.
Thank you very much, Daniel. We have a question at the front immediately.
Walid Al-Sakar from JSO. Yeah, our concern actually here in the region that the electric vehicles actually will be affected by the high temperature climate, and the life of the batteries will be less, I think. And of course, the distance also will be affected related to the usage of the air conditioning. And of course, nobody here is using the motor vehicles without the air conditioning on. The last question is regarding the safety of these batteries, especially impact. What is the difference between the European regulation and the regulation there in the United States?
Thank you, Wally. So regarding the question of battery performance in extreme temperature conditions, both either hot or cold, that is one of the reasons that General Motors developed a battery pack that had its own climate control system, so the performance stays very good in varying conditions. You will see the range vary from using air conditioning or in the winter using a heater. It does affect the range of the vehicle. But in terms of, I think, your question, getting to the degradation of the battery over a life of its use, the approach that we took and what we've seen with the data has been very good. And we offer the vehicles in very cold climates and very warm climates in the U.S., and we're seeing extremely good performance, as you can see by the few problems that we've had per million vehicles. And regarding the second question on the differences between the crash standards of the U.S. and the UNECE, essentially, and Francois may have to help me with this a little bit, but my understanding is the crash performance between the FMVSS 305 and the R94 and R95 of UNEC are pretty much mirroring each other.
Actually, I had a question relating to customers. You said that you put the slide up, and it seemed like that fun was one of the major drivers for buying an electric vehicle, whereas the environment wasn't. We know that competition in the industry is one of the things that will drive growth. How do you see different manufacturers competing on which features, which elements of electric vehicles will see manufacturers competing and driving that growth moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the variety of vehicles, even just out here, you have super high performance vehicles that are appealing to one set of customers. You have, very fuel efficient, just only battery electric vehicles that appeal to a different set of customers. But that's what each company is going to have to do, is to differentiate the customers they're targeting and then develop that vehicle perfectly towards that customer that you're aiming for. But there's room for everyone to play, I believe, and everybody is going to be targeting various customers based on their brands and what they truly mean as a brand to their company. So it's going to be exciting.
Any other questions at all? No? Okay. Another question, yes. It's all right. Good questions.
Yeah, regarding the safety of environment, because we have a big concern related to the impact for those batteries. What's the rules there and the laws in the United States for recycling the batteries themselves, and how is the manufacturers themselves are responsible for their product when the lifetime of these batteries expire? What the laws that control that and make sure there will be no bad impact for these batteries for the environment?
Yeah, so in terms of battery recycling and what's going on, those are currently being developed in the U.S. General Motors is looking at ways to use these batteries when they're technically finished as a vehicle application. Because what we've seen is these battery packs have a lot of energy capability in them when they're done being used as an automotive battery. And we've worked with some companies to develop standalone battery pack storage facilities that could be incorporated into the grid to store electricity and level the grid from spikes in energy use. So that's one opportunity that we're looking at very closely. But in terms of recycling, both through our dealers and printed on the battery packs, we talk about websites and phone numbers that are available for recycling these batteries. So we do have that in place right now. But I think the truly exciting thing is what are the possibilities that could be done with these batteries when they're done with being used as a transportation battery.
Thank you. We've still got time for questions. Is there any last questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Danny. Appreciate it.